Imagine there's a mountain in front of you that you need to climb. The ground is covered with stones and sharp rocks. Above, you can see snow. But you're barefoot, and the only shoes you have are a pair of stilettos that are 3 sizes too small. What would you do? Would you crawl? Ask someone to carry you? Just give up? That's what it's like to use a wheelchair that hasn't been customized to your body, your environment, and your lifestyle. And that's what life is like for 52 million people every day. But it doesn't need to be. We're going to look at how we can disrupt assumptions, disrupt manufacture, and disrupt perceptions of wheelchairs and the people who use them. So let's disrupt assumptions. I'm going to start with a quick show of hands. How many of you have ever been backpacking? Okay, this is very impressive. It's pretty much the entire room. And how many of you have ever bought a Lonely Planet travel guide? That's actually way more impressive. That is pretty much everyone too. Okay, so that happens to be my go-to guide. And the first one I ever bought, it was for a sabbatical from work that I planned to spend backpacking around Southeast Asia. I started with a guide to Thailand. And there were temples, there were elephant sanctuaries. I couldn't have been more excited. So I planned my itinerary and I booked my tickets. Well, it was only then that I stumbled across a chapter hidden at the back, the accessibility section. Well, the advice was unequivocal. Thailand was not a suitable destination for a disabled traveler. I might find wheelchair access in some of the biggest hotels in larger cities, perhaps in some of the major resorts. But other than that, it was no-go. But when I started to think about it, it just didn't make any sense. Because according to the World Health Organization, 1% of the population needs to use a wheelchair. So by my calculations, in the countries I plan to visit, there should be 1 wheelchair user for every 99 people I saw walking. And if they could find a way to get around, then I could too, surely. So I ignored the advice and I got on the plane. It was awesome and accessible in its own way. I strapped my wheelchair to the top of buses, to the back of motorbikes. I climbed mountains on donkeys. I crossed rivers on kayaks. And surprisingly, one of the most remote places I ever visited turned out to be one of the most accessible. A small rural village in northern Laos had dirt tracks instead of roads, so there weren't any sidewalks for me to have to navigate. All the houses were just built on a single floor, so there weren't any steps for me to have to climb. And the more I traveled, the more it started to occur to me that often the places with the least infrastructure were actually the easiest for me to get around. But there was something really strange. In 2 months of traveling, I only saw 2 other wheelchair users. And neither of them were wheeling themselves. They were both being pushed in big, heavy, clunky hospital wheelchairs that you could never wheel yourself in. So I started to investigate. The people and organizations that I met explained that to give independence, a wheelchair needs to be customized to the body, the lifestyle, and the environment of its user. With traditional manufacturing techniques, the cost of this is prohibitive. A fully customized wheelchair like mine costs about $3,000. Well, in a country like Laos, that's 6 times the average annual salary. It's just not affordable. And according to the World Health Organization, worldwide, there are 52 million people who need a wheelchair, but can't afford one that meets their needs. It wasn't just about disrupting assumptions. We needed to disrupt manufacture. I struggled with the problem for months. Then, in December 2015, I happened to visit an organization in Jordan. They were using 3D printing to support refugees from the Syrian crisis. They showed me a fully customized prosthetic hand that they'd made for a boy who'd lost his fingers in the conflict. My first question? How much did it cost? $39, they said. Impossible. They explained that 3D printing and digital fabrication are ways to make customized products more cheaply. Still, I wasn't convinced. But what about the design costs? Well, there weren't any. They used an open source design, freely available for anyone, anywhere to access, adapt, and use. All they'd had to do, enter the boy's arm measurements and press print. Seeing the potential, I asked whether anyone was doing anything similar with wheelchairs, and their answer was simple: no. Well, I was blown away. So I flew back to Europe, and I started to organize hackathons, bringing together wheelchair users, designers, makers, engineers, artists, students, anyone who was interested. During our first hackathon, we scanned one of the participants' back and butt, sent the information through to a CNC mill, just like you'd send a document to a printer. And we milled the exact contours of his body out of a piece of high-density foam to create a highly personalized seat and backrest. We also designed a lightweight wheelchair frame, using off-the-shelf pieces of carbon fiber that we cut to the exact leg length of the user, and joined together with lugs that we 3D printed to match the exact angle of their preferred sitting position. Total cost? $300. Well, we had more hackathons, we put our designs online, and our community started to grow. Currently, students from 84 universities across the world are competing to design a modular system, so wheelchair parts can be designed by different people, made in different places, but still fit together. At the start, our focus was just on affordability, but we learned something else from the hackathons. Even when people can afford $3,000 for a fully customized wheelchair, they still weren't happy. Because $3,000 buys the ability to customize for function, but not for form. It wasn't just about disrupting manufacture. We needed a way to disrupt perceptions. So I was 8 years old, lying on the optometrist's black leather couch. After reading the last lines of tiny little letters, Mr. Robinson got up off his chair and he looked over me, saying, "Rachel, you need to wear glasses." Well, I jumped off the chair, I ran into the store, and I started trying on frame after frame after frame. I was elated, and I have never felt more glamorous than I did back then, aged 8 years old, admiring my reflection with my brand new hot pink plastic glasses. 10 years later, I was also lying down. This time it was a hospital bed. This time was different. Again, a doctor got up and he leaned over me. This time he paused before saying, "Rachel, you're going to need to use a wheelchair." But this time there were no choice of frames. Physiotherapist ordered my wheelchair. And the first time I saw myself sitting in it, I didn't recognize myself. But are glasses and wheelchairs really so different? It's not just perceptions of how I look, it's also perceptions of who I am. I'm going to let you into a little secret. People often tell me I am inspirational because I use a wheelchair, yet I backpack around the world. I use a wheelchair, yet I have a job. I use a wheelchair, yet I drive a car. But back when I was just a glasses wearer, no one ever told me I inspired them. But why can't we see people who wear their wheels like people who wear glasses? We've looked at how we can disrupt assumptions, how we can disrupt manufacture, and how we can disrupt perceptions of wheelchairs and the people who use them. Let's disrupt disability. Imagine there's a mountain in front of you that you need to climb. The ground is covered with stones and sharp rocks. Above, you can see snow. But this time, you put on your hiking boots, or maybe your wheels. And what do? You climb.